The Cubs dropped game 2 in extra innings against the Pirates on Friday. Let's talk some Cade Horton workload, Daniel Palencias splitter, and what it's like to sit behind home plate and watch Paul Skenes today on the Cubs Daily Podcast. Cade Horton today looked pretty good, per usual. I've said it before, but even in his quote-unquote bad starts, I think he's looked pretty solid. ERA now at 3.47 in 7 MLB games after going 5 2/3 today, 4 base runners, 4 strikeouts. Pirates were the 4th worst team in MLB entering the game versus right-handed pitching. Horton did exactly what he was expected to do on a rainy Friday at Wrigley. And you already know what I'm going to say here. At least I bet you can guess. I don't really think you can take Horton out of the rotation when Shota Imanaga comes back. Shota is throwing in a complex league game in Arizona on Saturday. Horton has just been too good, honestly, and I think the floor for him on a start-to-start basis is exceptional. Now, the issue with how good he has been is his workload. He threw just 34 innings last year, but the days of using a raw innings total as a baseline for when to shut down a pitcher are mostly gone. The Cubs and other organizations usually have like an internal workload number that's based off a variety of things, from catapult systems, as they're called, which measure general activity and movement. Those are kind of like these sports bra style devices you might see on guys in BP shagging or taking BP on the field before game time, to things like jump testing, which measures central nervous system fatigue and a bunch of other variables that teams kind of extrapolate that data and build off, to other biomechanical markers that are literally tracking limb movement in game, IDing things in the lower half that might be fatiguing out, etc. And my guess is that the Cubs are looking at this number, however they want to aggregate all these variables together, and how it trends over time to determine what exactly to do with Horton in terms of his workload and when to maybe pull back on him. Now, do they have a theory around, which inning number that might come, the pullback? Sure, but I imagine they're also going to react and see how things progress. They haven't had Horton kind of eclipse the 80-inning mark in a really long time under their purview, especially with the new pitches he's throwing in the curveball and the changeup, etc., and the usage of those offerings, which will influence his stress. I don't think there's any chance of a raw shutdown midseason, as in like you're gone for the month of July and August. We'll see in September, as kind of the modern thought in baseball on the strength and conditioning side is that shutting down and ramping back up is usually where the highest injury risk is. So you're not going to subject Horton to that. I think the move here is to let him run as a starting pitcher until you start to see some of those flags pop up on the workload side of things. Then you convert him into a reliever and hope that those workload numbers don't really pop any higher as he gets into, say, August and September, etc. I don't really think it makes a ton of sense to send him back to AAA, where you'd be basically wasting bullets, unless the idea is to send him back and he throws in 2 to 4 inning stints, basically. Think of Garrett Crochet last year with the White Sox, to kind of manage that workload intensity. But even then, I think that wouldn't be it with the understanding that he then comes back as a starter late in the year. You saw Crochet just extended his season out last year. He didn't eventually then all of a sudden throw 9 innings or 7 innings plus late in the year. So maybe you do that and then bring him back as a reliever late. There's a lot of variables here, and especially with Jet Horse saying that the focus is on starting pitching at the deadline. Your playoff starters are likely Shota Imanaga, a new guy, whoever that might be or ends up being, and probably Boyd or Tyone, depending on the matchup. I don't really think Cade Horton slots in that sense. So that's why I view him kind of more as a reliever late in the year and a starter now while he's absolutely rolling. If you're setting the over-under at 100 innings for Horton in total this season, he's currently at about 36, just over 36 after today's game, I'm going to take the over with a chunk of it, as I said, coming late in the year as a reliever. Cubs drop this game again 2-1. Daniel Palencias pitches in the 9th inning to close out that inning, and he throws a splitter to Adam Frazier, and Frazier swings right through it for a strikeout, inning over. Yes, a splitter. This pitch is sick. Palencias just doesn't really throw it a lot. He's only thrown 7 of them in Major League Baseball this season, 2 of them in Detroit on June 7th. Prior to that Detroit game, he didn't throw one for about 3 weeks, and he broke one out today. He's a really fun reliever. I think everybody who watches him knows that. The velocity is fantastic. The Cubs are sitting top 10 in baseball for reliever velocity this season which is awesome to see, given in prior years that was always a gripe, I think, of people watching the Cubs, and the bullpen volatility they did have was they didn't really have anybody sitting over 96 or 98 miles per hour, or multiple guys in particular sitting over that number. The issue with the splitter for Palencias is if you watch the last 3 that he's thrown, they're all up in the zone a bit, which is pretty much like the only spot splitters are going to allow damage. Most pitches for that example, especially when you're trying to go down with them, usually allow damage up. So you saw this with the Frazier one today. Frazier just swung through it. I imagine this is something they're trying to work on, because if he can consistently get that pitch down, it's an absolute weapon for him. Let's talk some Paul Skenes quick. Now, I stepped into Wrigley Field today to watch a bit of this outing. I usually end up watching things from the studio here right across the street. But as a pitching nerd, when I go into a stadium, it's usually for good reason, and Paul Skenes is a good reason. And I'm pretty specific about where I want to sit if I'm going in to watch a pitcher like this specifically. And that answer is right behind home plate, so I moseyed down there, talked to a couple ushers, grabbed a seat for a bit, sitting in the rain, got a little wet, but very much worth it. And I posted a few videos from the angle of my perspective on my X account. I encourage you to check it out so you kind of see what I'm talking about here. But right behind home plate, literally staring directly out at Paul Skenes, gives you really good perspective of how a pitcher's release can make pitches look differently. And I love it because I'm a data guy, so I love digging into everything I see on Baseball Savant, all the numbers. But the data gives you one perspective. When you go into a stadium and watch from this good of a vantage point, you can kind of stitch together what you're seeing in the numbers with what you're seeing in person. And I think it's fundamentally different than doing so via video on screen, if I'm being honest. You can get a really good perspective watching a guy like Skenes compared to Horton as to how Skenes' four-seam fastball moves, on average 15 to 18 inches to his arm side, so into right-handed hitters. Whereas you watch Cade Horton and his fastball cuts almost on average about an inch to his glove side. That's like a 20-inch difference. The plate is 17 inches, so you can see how this creates variance despite the fact they're both throwing quote-unquote a four-seam fastball. Sometimes you can see this on video, but again, this vantage point really gives you that perspective of what that arm side movement is versus the glove side movement. And my main takeaway after watching Skenes is just the combination of visually how much his ball moves. It's moving a ton to his arm side when he's throwing. Some of these pitches just feel like they take off, especially when they're, misses to the arm side to some extent and run up away on lefties, or whether he tries to backdoor a righty. But then you realize he's also sitting 99 miles per hour on his four-seam fastball, and it makes that movement even more exceptional. Generally, as you throw harder, your ball has less time to move, based on how we generally observe and track and measure movement on the data side of things. That's how we basically baseline it, right? More movement, generally slower pitches. Harder pitches just have less time to move on the way to the plate. But Skenes kind of breaks that model with his combination of movement and velocity. He's one of 4 players in MLB this season with more than 14 inches of this arm side movement on their fastball, either a four-seamer or a sinker, and averaging over 98 miles per hour. Jose Alvarado, Jose Martinez are 2 others, but of course those are both relievers, and that puts into context just how good Paul Skenes is as a starting pitcher, seeing that 3-4 times through as he turns over lineups. Just a really cool moment to appreciate one of the best pitchers in the world. And tomorrow, I will not be going into the stadium most likely for Mike Burrows. No offense, the starting pitcher for the Pirates. He's not Paul Skenes. Maybe I go in and watch some Matt Boyd, though, because I love his perspective, lefty, weird look, etc., and his sparkling 2.89 ERA. Those are our starting pitchers for tomorrow's game on Saturday. Again, we got a 1:20 start Central Time. We'll have a noon pregame show. I encourage you to check out everything we have on the Marquee Sports Network app, marqueesportsnetwork.com. A lot of the writing from Andy Martinez and a variety of our other digital reporters who do a great job covering the team, as well as our YouTube channel, which we're pushing a lot this year, over 30,000 subs. Cool stuff going up there. If you ever want to watch post-game press conferences or want to check out highlights, we have that basically before, and might be the only place I think that actually posts those in full. So it's some good watching if you got nothing to do on a random Friday night. Take care.